All right, let's try a little thought experiment. Imagine it's February 1943. You're a German tank commander in North Africa, a battle-hardened veteran. You think you've seen it all, that you know everything there is to know about armored warfare. And then, you see something that just doesn't make sense. American Sherman tanks, tanks you know are technically inferior to your Panzers, are moving with a kind of coordination that seems almost, well, supernatural. Today, we are going to pull back the curtain on a secret that really defined World War II, and honestly became the blueprint for all modern warfare. We're going to find out why the most powerful weapon on the battlefield is often the one you can't see at all. Let's get into it.
So this was the exact question that was haunting German officers at Kasserine Pass. They're watching 5 American Shermans, totally separated by hills, by smoke. They have no line of sight to each other. And yet, they all converge on a single target with perfect, flawless timing. There were no signal flags, no flares, absolutely nothing visual to explain how they were doing it. It was like they were reading each other's minds. And for the Germans watching this, it was terrifying. This wasn't just a new tactic. It was like the enemy was operating on a completely different level of reality. So how on earth was it possible?
To these veteran soldiers of the Wehrmacht, what they were up against felt less like an army and more like some kind of supernatural force. I mean, their own doctrine, Blitzkrieg, was built on radio communication, but it had its limits. What they were seeing the Americans do at Kasserine Pass and later on, it just shattered those limits. It basically broke all the known rules of war.
Just try to imagine the confusion. You're a German tank crew, and you can barely hear your own platoon leader over the crackle and static of your AM radio. But you're looking out your periscope and you're watching American units, scattered across miles of rough terrain, moving with the unity of a hive mind. It was like every single tank knew exactly what the others were thinking and doing, covering each other's blind spots, focusing their fire, all as if they were being guided by one single invisible hand. This was way beyond just good training. This was something else.
So, what was this invisible hand? The answer wasn't where you'd expect to find it. It wasn't about thicker armor or a bigger gun. You know, the two things everyone loves to argue about when they compare tanks. Nope. The real revolution, America's true secret weapon, was hidden away inside the turret. It was a technological leap so huge that the Germans just didn't see it coming, and it was about to change the entire game of ground combat forever.
The difference in philosophy was it was night and day. The Germans operated on a really rigid top-down system. You had one platoon leader with a transmitter giving orders, and all the other tanks, who mostly just had receivers, they had to listen and obey. You take out that one command tank, the whole unit is deaf, dumb, and blind. But the Americans, they built a flexible network. Think of it like a rigid pyramid versus a dynamic spider web. One breaks if you take out the top, the other just finds a new connection. And the technology gap itself was just enormous. The German Fu-5 was an AM radio. You know, AM, prone to static from literally everything. The tank's own engine, other electrical systems, even bad weather. Meanwhile, the American SCR-508 used FM radio, which meant crystal clear voice communication. But then you look at the rest of the numbers, more than double the power. A range of 7 miles while moving, compared to less than 1 for the Germans. And then, the most important number on this whole chart, deployment. Only about 1 in 5 German tanks could both talk and listen. Every single Sherman could.
100%. I mean, just let that number sink in for a second. This is not just a small improvement. This is a total paradigm shift. It meant that from the very beginning, every single American armored unit that rolled onto the battlefield was a fully connected, living, breathing network. This wasn't some special gear for command tanks. This was standard issue for everybody.
And that right there created the most crucial advantage of all. The American system had no single point of failure. If your platoon leader's tank gets knocked out, no big deal. The crew in the tank next to him could just immediately take over, relaying information, coordinating the attack, all without skipping a beat. This made American tank units unbelievably resilient and adaptable in the chaos of battle, something that just baffled their German opponents again and again.
So now we get to see how this invisible advantage actually played out in the brutal math of combat. We're moving from the tech specs to the life or death reality on the battlefields of Europe. This is where the theory of having a better network became a very, very bloody fact. Now, get this. This is a quote from a captured German intelligence report in 1944, and it is absolutely fascinating. It shows the Germans could clearly see the effect. They saw the incredible coordination, but they completely, totally misunderstood the cause. They just chalked it up to better American training and discipline.
It never even occurred to them that the real reason was a technological gap so massive they couldn't even imagine it existed.
And you know, this was one of the biggest intelligence failures of the war. Because they misdiagnosed the problem, they never came up with a way to fight it. They kept trying to hunt down tanks with big antennas, thinking they were cutting the head off the snake. But they didn't realize they were fighting a hydra. Every single Sherman was a potential new head, a new commander for the entire battlefield.
And this is where that network becomes truly, unbelievably lethal. Okay, so a single Sherman spots a dug-in German anti-tank gun. The crew doesn't have to risk charging it alone. No, instead, they become the eyes and ears for the entire army. They hop on their crystal-clear FM radio, they call in the exact coordinates to an artillery battery miles behind the lines, and within just a few minutes, a whole world of high-explosive pain is raining down on that target.
4 minutes for the Americans versus 22 minutes for the Germans. That isn't just a small difference. In a firefight, that is an eternity. In the time it took a German unit to get a fire mission requested, approved, and fired, an American unit could have already spotted the target, had artillery blow it off the map, and moved on to find the next one.
If you need one single statistic to prove this entire point, this is it right here, the Battle of Oracourt. Okay, on paper, the German Panther tank was way better than the Sherman. Better gun, thicker armor, the whole deal. The Germans should have wiped the floor with the Americans, but they didn't. The U.S. 4th Armored Division used their radio network to set up ambushes, to call in instant artillery and air support, and to swarm these technically superior but information-starved German tanks. The result? An astounding 7-to-1 kill ratio. This is the ultimate proof. A superior network will always defeat a superior platform.
So having a brilliant piece of technology is one thing, but being able to mass produce it on a scale the world has never seen and put it in every single vehicle in your army, that's a whole other level. This wasn't just a win for the engineers, it was an industrial miracle that frankly, no other country on Earth could have pulled off at the time.
Look at these numbers, they're just staggering. The Motorola factory in Chicago, which was making car radios before the war, just completely switched gears. They started churning out tens of thousands of these incredibly complex radio sets, and that meant that every single one of the almost 50,000 Sherman tanks built during the war rolled right off the assembly line with this game-changing advantage already baked in.
And this is what it all boils down to. You have one force that is 100% connected, fighting against another force that was, for all intents and purposes, 80% deaf. Every American tank crew fought knowing they were part of a team, constantly talking, constantly sharing information. Most German crews fought alone in the dark, with no idea what was happening just over the next hill, until it was way too late. And the ultimate irony in all of this is that Germany, the country that had pioneered using radios and tanks to invent the Blitzkrieg, they basically wrote the book on this stuff. But by 1943, they were so far behind the American system that their own doctrine was being used against them, only perfected and amplified by an enemy they had completely underestimated.
You know, back then, what the Americans were doing in their Shermans didn't even have a name. Today, we call it network-centric warfare. It is the military doctrine of the 21st century. Its DNA is in everything now, but its birth, its origin story, can be traced right back to that heavy metal box of tubes and wires, the SCR-508 radio. The Americans were decades ahead of their time. So what does this network effect actually mean on the ground? Well, it means every tank is an eye for the artillery. It means a warning about an ambush can flash across the entire force in seconds. It means a platoon from one company can team up with tank destroyers from another on the fly to take out a surprise threat. It means the entire army becomes a single intelligent killing organism that is way, way more powerful than just the sum of its parts. Look, this isn't just a cool history lesson. The principles that were forged in the hedgerows of Normandy and the deserts of Africa are more relevant today than they have ever been. The legacy of that invisible advantage, it doesn't just define modern military strategy, it defines the very connected world we all live in. Nothing says it better than this. And this isn't some American historian patting his own country on the back. This quote comes from a modern German military training manual. Germany itself learned the most painful, most critical lesson from their own defeat. How you connect your forces is more important than how good your individual machines are. Information dominance is the ultimate high ground.
And that's the payoff. That's the big takeaway from this entire story. The network will defeat the platform. We saw it proven again in 1991, when coalition forces with amazing communication links just dismantled an Iraqi army with pretty decent tanks. And we see it today in every single modern conflict. The side that can gather, share, and act on information faster than their opponent, that's the side that wins. So I'll leave you with this final thought. The technology has obviously changed. It's not FM radios anymore, it's satellites and drones and encrypted data links, but the core principle is exactly the same. The battle for control over the invisible electromagnetic spectrum, a battle that really began with the Sherman tank, is still the key to victory. And it just makes you wonder, in our hyper-connected world, is the most important battlefield of all still the one we can't even see?